Rivers. Come on in, kings and queens, get ready for the conversation. I know we've had a trying week, most of us, especially if you live in Texas, as I do, but we made it through. We made it through. So we're getting ready for another week. Get your head on a swivel and get ready for the conversation. Again, I'm Steffanie Rivers, and you're watching my TriCast. I'm TriCasting on Facebook Live, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So you might be watching me on one of those platforms. And if so, feel free to join in the conversation. Welcome back. If you are returning to the conversation, and if you are new to the conversation, we want to welcome you. We want you to like, share, and subscribe so that when I post new videos, you will be the first to know. Welcome again. I'm Steffanie Rivers. And if you want to text me during the live, you can text me at 214-919-9360, and I will do my best to respond. Let me make sure I am ready for your texts. So today we're going to talk about being blindsided. Of course, most of us, when we're fending off an attack, we instinctively protect the front side. You instinctively protect your front side, but it's from the blind side that most of us are, that you're most vulnerable, whether you're trying to protect your home because you got plenty of cameras and Ring videos and all that stuff up front. But what about the back? What about the side windows? What's going on with that? So a lot of us, we are prepared for an attack, but we can't be prepared for an attack alone. You need to build alliances. So when it comes to politics, most voters give all their attention to federal government issues, such as who's the president and who is in the president's cabinet and what is the president going to do. But when you think about the state legislatures, that's where policies are created when it comes to funding education, when it comes to funding criminal justice, and when it comes to voter policies in your state. You can't ignore the state legislators or the state legislatures, because ignoring that is akin to ignoring your blind side, leaving your blind side unprotected. And that's what a lot of us do. We think just because we got past 2020 and we got somebody out of office and we put somebody in office and we got a new administration, now everything's just going to be okay. In the meantime, here's what's been happening since November 2020. There have been over 100 bills that have been created and are pre-approved to be voted on in 28 different state legislatures across the country. And that, if you want to, you're thinking, well, what's the big deal about that? Well, early 2020, before November 2020, there were only 35 bills. After 2020's November election, there were 100 bills that were presented in state legislatures. How many states? 28 state legislatures are presenting bills to change the way you vote. And a lot of those bills are having to do with making it, they're restricting who can absentee ballot. They want everybody to have to show up in person. They are making it stricter on using photo identification, and they are making it easier to purge people who are registered voters in different states. Now, again, last year, there were only 35 bills across the country in 15 states that focused on voting rights. Now, since 2020, in the past 3 months, there have been 100 bills presented. Somebody doesn't like the way you voted. Somebody is upset because millions of people showed up to the polls, be it from absentee ballot voting or whether you showed up in person. And so that's called, the way that they're working this thing in the state legislatures, you could call that voter suppression. In fact, I'm not the person who labeled it voter suppression. There are a lot of entities, there are a lot of research centers. There's this company called the Brennan Center for Justice, and they are calling it voter suppression by mostly Republican state lawmakers. So according to Brennan, Pennsylvania is the #1 state in the country to present bills that they want to be turned into laws when it comes to how Pennsylvanians vote in the upcoming elections. They have proposed about 14, they lead the pack. Pennsylvania has presented 14 bills that they want to go into law to change the way you're able to vote. And then New Hampshire came in second with around 9 different bills that have been presented. And then it said Missouri, Mississippi, New Jersey, and Texas are tied with 8. Each of those states have presented 8 different bills since November to dictate and to change and to blindside us with how they want to change how you vote in the upcoming elections. And so that's very important, because people are looking and they're seeing how people are doing things, how people are voting. And then they said, okay, we're going to do the okie doke. We're going to run an okie doke on them. We're going to change up some stuff on them. So you think you know because you knew what to do in 2020, but if you think it's going to be that same way in 2021 and 2022 with the next cycle of elections, it's going to be changed up. So you might show up to the polls thinking you're going to do what you did in 2020, and it's going to be a whole new ball game. That's why you have to pay attention. That's why you have to know who is your state legislator, your state lawmaker, and what it is that they're presenting. And the same way that you might jump on your phone and find out what's going on with the latest news, or the same way you might look at CNN or Fox News or the Black News Channel, or whatever your news source is, you need to be paying attention, giving some of that time to your state legislators, so you can find out what it is, what some of these bills that they are starting to pass. So if you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. You're watching me. I'm Steffanie Rivers, and this is my video journal. So let me give you some examples of what is going on around the country. Now, you know, in Georgia had such a strong voter turnout for these 2 Senate seat runoffs. They had to have a runoff to win those 2 Senate seats. Georgia has never been a Democratic-led party voting state in its history, I don't think, or at least for the past 20, 30 years. But now the 2, Senator Warnock and Ossoff, now they are representing Georgia. But somebody in Georgia didn't like that. Some state legislators in Georgia didn't like that. Some Republican state legislatures in Georgia didn't like that. So Republican lawmakers, they want to ban ballot box drop-offs. Now, you know how when you are signed up or you get a ballot and you're because you might be in the military or you might work out of town or you might are planning to be out of town during the election and you say, I'm going to get me an absentee ballot so I can fill it out and then I'm just going to drop it off in the designated box that they have. Well, a state legislator in Georgia said he does not want any ballot boxes anywhere in Georgia. That's going to be against the law. So they want for people who absentee ballot in Georgia to have to walk in the ballot to somewhere and show an ID. Now, that kind of defeats the purpose of an absentee ballot if you got to walk in and show an ID to turn it in. But guess what? That's the whole point. They don't want you to vote. So if you've been voting absentee, they're about to change the way you vote. They're not going to allow you. They don't want you to be allowed to drop it off in the designated ballot box. So it's about to get real hard for y'all in Georgia to absentee vote. So if you know anybody who lives in Georgia, or if you live in Georgia, you need to get with your state legislative representative right now, because they're about to change the way y'all vote absentee. And you need to do that before they vote it in, because once they vote it in, it's hard to change up some after it's happened. It's hard to, get a divorce after you get married. You want to make sure you're doing the right thing before you make that decision. So you want them contact your state legislator and let them know you do not want them to abolish ballot drop boxes in Georgia. Just makes no sense. But that's what they're doing. Here's something else they want to do in Georgia. They realize, and his name is, I'm going to give you this guy's name. He would be legislator, Representative Barry Fleming from the 121st Congressional District in Georgia. He says he put forth a bill to ban Sunday early voting. He doesn't want y'all to show up on Sundays. Here's why. Because 72,000 people in Georgia voted on Sunday during the 2020 election cycle, whether it was early voting leading up to Election Day. 72,000 people went on a Sunday to vote. And of those 72,000, a third of them were African Americans. And most of them were Democrats. And a third of those were African Americans. And Republican Barry Fleming said he ain't having it. He doesn't want y'all to vote on Sundays. So here's what you need to do. If you know anybody who lives in Georgia or you live in Georgia, you need to let your state legislator know that you want them to include every day of the week for early voting, including weekends, especially on Sundays, because Barry Fleming don't want y'all to do that. Now, instead of Barry Fleming trying to suppress voter rights and voter privileges, what he should be trying to do is be a better state lawmaker and represent his constituents better. But instead of being a better him, he's trying to suppress your vote so you can't be the best you can be. And so that's what's going on. And here's the thing about about Barry Fleming's congressional district. His congressional district makes up 3 counties: Columbia County, McDuffie County, and Richmond County. Now, Richmond County, Augusta, Georgia, is in Richmond County. That's the largest county. Augusta, Georgia is the second largest city in Georgia. They have 57% African American people live in Augusta. So you mean to tell me Barry Fleming is willing to disenfranchise more than half of his constituents so that he can suppress their vote because he doesn't like the way they voted in the 2020 election? Really? Y'all gonna let that happen in Georgia? So what you need to do is if you live in Barry Fleming's 121st Congressional District, which includes Richmond County, McDuffie County, and Richmond, Columbia, and McDuffie County, and Richmond County being Augusta, Georgia. If you know anybody who lives in Augusta, Georgia, y'all need to get with Barry Fleming. Y'all need to get with Barry and tell him that he needs to change the way y'all don't like that bill that he has put forth in the state legislature. And if he gets it passed, if he doesn't drop it, if it gets passed, then he won't be there the next time around when it comes time to vote for Barry. So you have to start playing hardball with these people, because here's what I think probably didn't happen. Barry didn't come before his constituency. He didn't come before those 57% of African Americans who live in Augusta, Georgia, and tell them that he wants to abolish Sunday early voting. I bet he didn't tell them that. So y'all need to start asking questions instead of just sitting back letting people do what they want to do. Now, that's Georgia, but hold on, Arizona. Arizona is a traditionally Republican stronghold, and they got flipped in November 2020 to Democrats. So yeah, they're not liking that in Arizona. So here's what they want to do. They want to now in Arizona, they normally just send out ballots to everybody. Everybody in the state gets an absentee ballot. So you can decide, am I going to send back my absentee ballot and let that be my vote? Or am I going to walk in on election day or during early voting and vote? You get to choose. Well, now state legislators in Arizona, they say they don't want to send out an absentee ballot to every registered voter. They said none of that. Why? Because you voting, because you're doing what you're supposed to do. Well, they don't like that. So now they're saying only certain people will qualify to get that absentee ballot. That's what they want to do. They about to vote on that, y'all. If you live in Arizona or you know anybody who lives in Arizona, you need to tell them to get to finding out what's going on and making some phone calls and doing some emails and tweet your legislator, because they on Twitter just like we on Twitter. So we need to get with them. We need to let them know that we are not going to be blindsided by these backdoor state legislative voting rules that they're trying to put into place. So let them know you want everybody like they've been doing. Send them out an absentee vote ballot and let them decide how they want to use it or if they don't want to use it. And so that's what's going on in Arizona. So another lawmaker also wants to purge voters from the polls who don't vote every single time. So you know how sometimes you vote, sometimes you don't, although, you know, consistency would be nice. This legislator says if you don't vote every single cycle of every election, then they have the right to purge you from the system. I mean, maybe you had to work long that day and you didn't get a chance. Maybe you didn't like who was voting and you just decided to sit that one out. I mean, you know, it could be a lot of reasons. Maybe you were sick with COVID and you couldn't get in. So, yeah, they don't care. They're like, look, if you don't show up every single time, then that's going to be our signal that you will no longer, that you're going to have to re-register to vote. So if you want to keep from showing up to the polls and then they tell you, oh, we purged you because you didn't show up last time, then you need to show up this time and make some phone calls and some tweets and some emails and start letting these people know how you really feel. Let them know that if they don't support how you feel, then you will not be supporting them the next go round. So the bottom line is that Republicans are mad that you exercise your right to vote, and especially since you didn't vote for them and you didn't vote for, and their guy was not reelected to the White House. Now, here's how bad it's getting for traditional Republicans. A recent poll just showed that almost half of the registered Republicans right now today said that if Donald Trump started his own political party, they would leave the Republican Party, they would leave the grand old party, the GOP, they will vote with their feet and walk out on the GOP and go join Donald Trump. Donald Trump is to the Republican Party like COVID-19 is to the United States. No matter how hard you try, you think you killed it, you think it's done, you think we done with it, it's over with, it just keeps coming back. So the Republicans are running scared and they're crumbling. The foundation is crumbling. And I think Black people in America, people who feel disenfranchised, people who feel ignored, I think we need to start our own political party. I think we need to take advantage of their discourse while they're over there infighting and backbiting and calling each other names and stabbing each other in the back and stuff. I think we need to go ahead and start our own party and start doing our own thing, because this is the best time. But this is why Republicans in the state house are getting so scared and doing a whole bunch of blindsiding of traditional Democratic voters or people who or their constituents, who they ignore you, but they value you only when you can give them something like your vote, like your tax money, like your cheap labor. They like you when they can benefit from you, but any other value, they don't see nothing in you like that. And so that's why Republicans are now trying to figure out a way to keep you from voting. Since you're not going to vote for them, then they ain't got no use for you. They don't want you to show up to the polls, and they want to keep you from voting. So that's why you need to do something. You need to take a chapter out of their book. And let me stop right here and say, if you are just coming in, you can rewind, of course, but I'm talking about being blindsided by an attack from the back, from the blind side. You all up in here, and you got everything covered right here, but from here on back, you just as vulnerable as you can be. And that comes down to the state house. There are a lot of things that are voted on in your state legislature that affect your life, even that is more detrimental to you and your family and your livelihood and your well-being and the education of your kids and the criminal justice system. And we ignore that because we're so busy looking at CNN and what they're saying about what's going on with Joe Biden. And so it's a lot going on up the street from your house that you need to be worried about. So that's why it's important for you to pay attention to what's going on. And so a book that I read a couple of years ago is called Dark Money. And let me see if I can get the full name of it. It is by Jane Meyer, and it's called Dark Money, The History of Billionaire Radicals. And it's just essentially, it's talking about, it focused on these two old dudes, David and Charles Koch, Koch, David and Charles Koch. I'm gonna put that in. Read. I'm sorry, my computer is up on a little pedestal. Read Dark Money, about the Koch brothers. Excellent. Movement. But the Koch brothers. So essentially, this book just chronicled, I guess you could say, a chronology of their activity. David and Charles Koch, they had some other brothers. Essentially, their father out of Kansas started a oil refinery company. So they built a family business. They went into chemicals. They went into lumber yards. They created. They were like billionaires, and they took some of their money and started to they wanted to create favorable legislation so they could make more money. Because if you have oil refineries, if you're doing any type of industry, if you're doing any type of refinery where you can't dump, where you have to be cognizant of the environment, your business as it pertains to and how it affects the environment. So the Environmental Protection Agency was like their worst enemy because they had to follow the rules. They couldn't dump toxins into the water because people drink it. Duh, but they didn't care about that. They wanted to be able to do stuff that benefited them, even if it was to the detriment of everybody else. And so what they started to do is they started to take some of their money and build political action committees or create political action committees. But they might not necessarily call it that. They might give it a name like America First, or they would call it all these like obscure names that we might not suspect. Let's say most people would not suspect would be involved in funneling money to politicians. And then what would happen would be these politicians that they would funnel money to, they would, because when you run a campaign, it takes money, the advertising, the travel, it takes money to be able to stay abreast and get in front of people and always sending out that message and pushing that message. Anyway, the Koch brothers would create these dark money funnelers, dark money. And it's called dark money because they would have their friends and other rich people to give money to this organization, and they would be behind the organization, but you wouldn't know that they gave the money to the organization, because that's why it's called dark money, because you can't see who's really funding the PAC, Political Action Committee. So they would take the money, they would give it to certain politicians. These politicians would agree to push their campaign, and then when they got elected, then the politicians would get on the certain would be assigned to certain congressional they would be assigned to certain congressional committees that would oversee EPA, or that would oversee oil and gas, or they would oversee transportation, things like that. And then they would essentially do the bidding for the Koch brothers and their friends, their rich friends, and make these policies that would benefit them, that would not be a benefit to their employees and the people who live in the area and would be affected by the dumping and the smoke and the smog and all of that. So that's what they do. Now, I'm not saying that's a good thing that they did. I'm saying the strategy that they use is something that anybody could do. And here's what we need to do. See, we were introduced to the term quid pro quo by President Trump, who tried to bribe or try to illegally bully another country's president into meddling in the 2020 election so that Trump could win. So he was trying to get help with that. And we know all about that. But we we're introduced to the term and quid pro quo in a negative way. But people do it all the time. If I do this for you, in exchange, you're going to do this for me. That's called trading. That's called bartering. That's just called business. So what we need to do as people in America, Black people in America, descendants of African slaves, Black and brown people, disenfranchised people, however you want to call it, if you don't feel like you're being served by your particular representative or a particular party, you need to find somebody to run and push your agenda. And in exchange for them running and being the face of your agenda, you form your own political action committee, and y'all get together and put y'all's money together and get behind this individual and help them campaign and help them. So when they are elected, that person, in exchange for you getting them to elected, will push your agenda. That's how it's done. We need to do more of that. So instead of us being mad at somebody because we voted for you and you didn't do what you said you were going to do, or you didn't do what you should have done by us. Now, I've said that and I feel that way, but I also know that if I didn't get this agreement up front, then I did the negotiation wrong. In fact, there was no negotiation. I just gave away my vote. That's like, agreeing, going to the store and thinking you're going to come home with some food from the grocery store, but you didn't expect to pay. You got to pay first before you walk out the door. So you have to get payment. You have to get agreement. You have to get an understanding up front before you start giving people your support. So that's what it's all about. So if you have given yourself a goal of reading books, whether it's on your phone or whether it's a hard copy, I suggest you read Dark Money. It's by Jane Mayer, Mayer. And that's what I think we should do. Again, if you know anybody who lives in Georgia or Arizona or any of these other states, you need to check your state legislature and see what are they doing and how are they doing it. Are they trying to change the way I vote? Are they trying to take away absentee ballot boxes? Are they trying to make it harder for me to vote by now I got to have 2 or 3 or 4 IDs and all of this? And you know how they do. They don't like that you showed up to vote, and now they're going to change how you, they're going to try to change how you vote. So that's what's going on. We're not going for it. Don't be blindsided. Make sure that you have all your bases covered, but you can't do it alone. You got to build an alliance. So study political action committees and what it takes to get yours started. So when you find the candidate who's going to push your agenda, or you find a candidate who's out there and their agenda lines up with yours, you already can go to them and say, look, we are serious about this thing here, and here's where our PAC is going to back you. And that's what you need to do. So again, if you're watching, you might be watching on YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn, but I want you to watch me every week when I post. So please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. So the next time that I post, you'll be one of the first to know. And to find out more about the things that I care about, you can go to the written version of my journal. That's at eurweb.com. eurweb.com. Now this is my video version, and I post the written version on eurweb every week. So that's it. You have a positive week ahead. And remember, you're still supposed to be talking with your city council person or your county council person about no-knock search warrants. We want to abolish no-knock search warrants across the country, and we want to redirect police funding and start community policing. So put these things down, because there's always going to be something to take your attention. First weekend, it was the storm. The second weekend, it was after the storm. The third week is something else. The fourth week is Valentine's Day. The fifth week is a real storm. No water, no lights. It's always something. But you got to stay on track, because somebody is tracking you. So you need to track them. Okay? And that's it. Thanks for your time. Kings and queens, you have a super day.